Welcome back to MATCH B2B Insights. This is episode 2 in our 6-part negotiation management series. I'm Benny Fluman, here with Brenda and Brian Newman. Today we're looking at negotiation across cultures, how meaning, pace, and signals change globally.
That phrase, said yes, is exactly the trap, right? Because yes can mean interest. Yes can mean politeness. Yes can mean, I'm not rejecting you on this call. And none of those mean commitment.
And I'd tighten it even more. If your pipeline treats every verbal yes like stage progression, your forecast is already contaminated. A yes is not a decision, it's a signal.
Exactly. So here's the framework for today, and I want people to remember it. Signal, test, workflow, stage. Signal is what you heard. Test is how you verify meaning. Workflow is what actually happens next inside the account. Stage is what you earn only after workflow confirms movement. Most teams jump from signal straight to stage, and that is where fantasy enters the CRM.
Let me play that back. Signal is, sounds good. We like this. Let's continue. Test is, okay, what does that phrase mean here? Workflow is, who does what after the call? And stage is not your feeling. It's where the deal truly sits once that workflow starts. Is that fair?
That's clean. And the dangerous part is that the same word can mean different things in different markets. A direct conditional yes might mean yes if legal approves and the pilot succeeds. That is still conditional. In a high-context environment, a warm yes can simply mean we are maintaining harmony while we think. Totally different commercial meaning.
I agree on the interpretation piece, but I don't want people hiding behind culture to excuse bad selling. Universal business logic still matters. Budget still matters. Risk still matters. If nobody owns next steps, that's not cultural nuance. That's weak qualification.
Sure, but pace and meaning do change by market. That matters operationally. In some environments, a fast follow-up with specific actions signals genuine momentum. In relationship-first environments, the same delay that scares an American seller may simply mean internal consultation is happening before anyone overcommits. If you impose one market's rhythm on another, you misread the deal.
The phrase, one market's rhythm, is going to stick with me. Because sellers hear a direct conditional yes. Yes, pending procurement. And they can usually work with that. It's explicit. But a polite yes with no visible urgency feels positive while hiding uncertainty. That's much harder.
And the hardest contrast is follow-up behavior. In a fast market, if nobody schedules the next meeting in 24 or 48 hours, that silence is often negative. In a relationship-first market, the next step may come slower, but with heavier internal alignment once it does. Same silence, different implication.
Right, which is why signal alone is useless. You hear yes, fine, test it. Ask what happens next. Ask who else gets pulled in. Ask what could slow this down. If the answer is vague, the signal is weak. If the workflow is specific, the signal has weight.
And that's the emotional problem, honestly. Teams want the yes to mean what they need it to mean. They've worked the account. They want the relief. They want the win. So they promote encouragement into progress.
Yeah, hope is not a sales methodology. If the buyer says yes and nothing operational changes, then nothing changed.
That's the thesis of this episode. Not every yes is commitment. Some yeses are courtesy. Some are curiosity. Some are placeholders while the company decides whether you matter. Your job in global negotiation is not to feel optimistic. Your job is to decode accurately.
Okay, let's make this real. Benny Fluman, give me the story. What does this look like when a team gets fooled by warmth?
Here's a clean one. Cross-border software deal. Seller gets a video meeting with a senior business lead and 2 adjacent stakeholders. The call is warm from minute 1. Cameras on, smiles, strong engagement, lots of, this is interesting, we can see the value, yes, this could fit. Then the buyer asks for pricing quickly, asks for a short summary deck, and says they want to move efficiently. Seller leaves the call thinking, great, we found urgency.
The token there is pricing quickly. That's the one teams overread. They hear fast pricing request and assume buying intent, when sometimes it just means information gathering.
Exactly, so the seller responds fast. Same day recap, next day pricing, polished deck, internal celebration. And then silence. Not one explicit no, no conflict, no rejection, just slower replies, then a polite note saying they're still discussing internally. Seller interprets the silence as progress. They must be socializing it. But there was no defined workflow, no mapped approval path, no agreement on who joins next, no test for readiness, just warmth plus speed.
Warmth plus speed. That is such a dangerous combination because it feels like proof. If people are kind and responsive and ask for pricing, the team feels smart for reading momentum there.
Right, but workflow tells the truth. Months later, what do they learn? The original contact was interested, yes, but the organization was still in early internal evaluation. No real buying process had been activated. Courtesy was misread as readiness. Silence was misread as hidden progress. And because the seller never asked what happens internally after this meeting, they had no visibility into the actual stage.
I'm going to push back a little. That can be culture, yes, but a lot of the time that is just bad selling. If you leave a call without next step ownership, without stakeholder mapping, without friction discovery, I don't care what country you're selling into, you're guessing.
But Brian Newman, isn't Benny Fluman's point that the guessing gets worse cross-border because the emotional cues are easier to misread? Like, the kindness itself becomes data when it shouldn't.
Fair. Kindness becomes false data. I buy that. I just don't want listeners saying, oh, the deal stalled because of culture, when really they skipped basic deal control.
And I don't want listeners applying US-style directness as the only valid buying signal. Both mistakes are expensive. That's why the practical tool matters. After any promising meeting, ask 3 questions. 1. What happens internally after this meeting? 2. Who needs to be involved next? 3. What would slow this down?
I like question 3 the most. What would slow this down? Because it forces real risk into the room. If they say procurement, legal, budget timing, internal alignment, whatever, now you're testing meaning instead of admiring enthusiasm.
And question 1, what happens internally after this meeting, is the workflow question. If the answer is specific, maybe there's substance. If the answer is fuzzy, we'll chat, we'll review, we'll get back to you, that's not stage progression, that's fog.
Exactly. Culture affects how signals are expressed. Bad selling is failing to test them. Those are different problems, and strong operators know how to separate them.
Here's the part people underestimate. Rejection is clean. Rejection hurts, but it's clean. Misinterpretation is what poisons the machine slowly.
And by the machine, you mean not just one rep feeling disappointed. You mean the whole revenue system starts absorbing bad information.
Exactly. SDR thinks the account is engaged, so they stop opening parallel paths. AE advances the stage too early, so forecast gets inflated. Leadership sees strong momentum in the report, so attention shifts elsewhere. Product hears positive market feedback and assumes adoption barriers are lower than they really are. One wrong read at the top of the funnel starts showing up everywhere.
This is why I keep hammering structure. Misread signal, wrong test, broken workflow, false stage, distorted forecast. And once forecast credibility drops, executive trust drops with it. Now you're not just losing a deal, you're damaging decision quality inside the company.
The phrase forecast credibility is the one boardrooms care about. Because one optimistic mistake is survivable. A pattern of optimistic interpretation? That changes hiring, spend, and urgency across the business.
Right. The CRO doesn't miss the quarter because somebody was polite on Zoom. The CRO misses the quarter because that politeness was converted into stage movement, commit language, and resource allocation.
And let's make it practical for teams selling globally. The real skill is not pushing harder after a warm call. It's decoding accurately. You do not reward nice energy with stage advancement. You reward verified workflow. Who moved? What changed? Which internal process started? That's what counts.
So if I'm listening to this as a founder or sales leader, the takeaway is not, be more cynical. It's more disciplined than that. Be curious, yes. Be open, yes. But check the stage through workflow, not through vibes.
Through workflow, not vibes. That's clean. Because global selling punishes projection. You project your own communication style onto the buyer, and suddenly a courtesy yes becomes a Q3 forecast line.
That's the series lesson, really. Negotiation management is not about pressure first. It's about interpretation first. If you decode the signal well, you ask better questions, build the right path, and protect the pipeline from fiction.
And if you decode it badly, the damage is weirdly quiet. Nobody says no. Nobody sounds upset. The deal just keeps occupying space, in meetings, in reports, in your head.
Until the quarter closes and everybody acts surprised.
Exactly. You rarely lose that deal in one dramatic moment. You lose it slowly inside the forecast the minute you mistake a signal for a stage. That's episode 2 of Match B2B Insights. I'm Benny Fluman with Brenda and Brian Newman. See you in the next one.